Welcome back to the Belonging Network Summit. We are continuing our conversation all about self-care strategies with changemakers. And I am so honored to introduce you to our next guest, the incredible Emily and Amelia Nagoski. Earlier this year, the Nagoski twins published Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. They've decided to write about burnout to help readers reduce stress and more effectively process their emotions. Together, they offer valuable insights on how to feel into our feelings and strengthen human connections. Their insights are especially valuable to those of us in the workplace striving to build inclusive, collaborative, and trusting teams. Given Emily and Amelia's incredible leadership as self-care advocates, I'll be asking them what it means to burn out, how change agents like us can identify the signs of when burnout is nearing, and what we can do to stay clear of being crispy or burning out altogether. At the end of our talk, we'll walk away with the strategies necessary to nurture our health, well-being, and creativity, which will give us the energy necessary to continue doing the change that we wish to see in the world. So Emily and Amelia, thank you so much for leading this discussion and welcome to the summit. To kick things off, could you frame the conversation about burnout and how to avoid it by just giving us a sense of your own working definition of what burnout is?
Sure. Burnout was first defined by a research psychologist named Herbert Freudenberger in 1975. He established 3 criteria, which are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and decreased sense of accomplishment. The WHO has their own definition of it, and they recently updated it to include some of Freudenberger's criteria. But most people don't experience burnout in a clinical way where they're going to have to see a medical professional in order to seek care. We experience burnout in a colloquial way. So we have a colloquial definition that we use in the book. And we say that burnout is the experience of feeling overwhelmed and exhausted by everything you have to do, and yet somehow at the same time still worried that you're not doing enough.
So that is real, and it definitely relates to so many people who have participated throughout the summit and might even be feeling a little burnt out by all of the things that are possible and just trying to figure out where to start. And so when it comes to emotional exhaustion, help us understand your definition of what emotions are and how we exhaust them.
Sure. Yeah. So emotions, maybe the most important message in the book is that emotions are biological events that happen in your biological body. They are not just feelings. They're not in your imagination. They don't partition themselves off in your brain. They happen physiologically. When we're talking about the fight or flight emotions, those are fear, anything from slight worry all the way up through terror, or the fight emotions, that's anything from frustration and annoyance all the way up to rage. Those are all the fight emotions. Those are physiological events, stress responses happening in your actual body. And like all of our physical processes, it's a cycle. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And Amelia doesn't love it when I use this analogy, but digestion has a clearly defined beginning, middle,
Sure.
end.
Yes.
Right? And if you don't get to the end part, not so good things happen. And sometimes our lives do not allow us an opportunity to get all the way to the end of an emotional cycle, and so it needs our help. So you have this biological thing happening. You need to do something that your body recognizes because it's a stress response, and your stress response is about the physiological escape from a stressor, a threat. You need to do something that tells your body, look, you have arrived safely home from whatever that dangerous thing was. And we have we got a dozen different things. Should we talk about strategies for completing the stress response cycle?
We're starting with defining our terms first.
We're definitely going to
So then the way that you exhaust an emotion is that you stay stuck in the middle of it. You never get a chance to let your body go all the way through the stress response cycle and return to a place of calmness and peace.
Yeah.
So emotions themselves are not the problem. Stress itself is not the problem. It's getting stuck. That's the problem.
Right. And, as you described the getting stuck part, it made me think of Pema Chodron in the concept that she talks about with Tonglen. So you're meditating. So she's a spiritual Buddhist, and she's based out of the Shambhala. Shambhala tradition. And the way that she talks about Tonglen is that if you're feeling something and you meditate on it, if you give yourself, she says 90 seconds. So I'm just curious if this aligns with some of the research that we've done, but if you give yourself 90 seconds to feel into what's going on, maybe you're feeling sad or depressed or whatever maybe the feeling that you want to turn away from because it's not a good feeling or emotion. She says that if you stick with it for 90 seconds, you're giving it time to go through. I think you talk about emotions being a tunnel. It gives you time to go through that tunnel. You can feel into it, and then release it. And what she says in her book is that oftentimes we feel something, and if it's not a feeling of euphoria or something that we like, we try to bury it, and we don't even give it a couple of seconds, let alone 90 seconds, and that's when it gets stuck. And so, I was reading through your work. That's the first thing that came up for me, and I wonder, does that resonate with some of the research that you've done or the way that you approach this work?
Yeah, there are three things that I like about that. First, it calls on us to turn toward uncomfortable feelings with kindness and compassion, I'm sure, because it's her. So the idea that you are uncomfortable with a thing and don't run away from it, don't deny it, don't ignore it, but turn toward that uncomfortable feeling. That's the first thing I like about that. The second thing is that it sets a limit. So you don't feel like I'm going to be swamped in sadness for the rest of my life. If I think about this sad thing, you say it's going to be 90 seconds and then it'll be over. So it's not so overwhelming. And the duration of 90 seconds is long enough, I think. I'm sure that it's not about exactly 90 seconds. In a lot of the strategies that we talk about for completing the stress response cycle, there is a duration of time that's recommended, 20 minutes of aerobic exercise, a 20-second hug, a 6-second kiss. It's not about the duration of time. It's about it being long enough for your body to shift into a new state where it feels safe. So even if you don't set a timer for 90 seconds, just make it long enough that you go from a state of discomfort to kind of comfort in the discomfort.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful, and I appreciate the 3 steps. I think that can be something really tangible for those tuning in right now. In terms of burnout and impact on health, and thinking about our mental health, our emotional health, even energetic, obviously physical health, how does it, if we stay stuck in an emotion, if we get exhausted, we're nearing burnout, what does that do to our bodies? Because as you said, our emotions are rooted in biology. So what's kind of the negative side if we're not willing to kind of really lean into our feelings?
Yeah, that shit will kill you.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's literally true. The stress response, intense emotion suppresses your digestive system and your immune system and your reproductive system. And increases your cardiovascular, blood pressure, heart rate, and that's fine when it lasts for the few minutes that it's designed to last. But if you stay in a state for minutes and hours and
semesters,
years at a time, your body's not meant to be in that place. And so gradually, just from a cardiovascular perspective, if your heart rate and blood pressure stay elevated for a long time, you have it's like a fire hose being sprayed on blood vessel surfaces that are intended to hold a gentle stream, and it starts to create wear and tear on the physical blood vessels, and those spots of wear and tear become places where plaque builds up, which is why stress causes cardiovascular disease. This shit will literally kill you. Anybody who's experienced digestive distress as a result of stress, who's experienced the first 2 days of your vacation you spend in bed with the flu because your stress is now gone, which means your immune system can finally start doing its job and communicating to you how very sick you are. And so you end up flat on your back for a couple days because your body's been trying to tell you to go to bed, and only now can you actually receive that message.
Okay. So this is all helpful, and we're not going to stay stuck on the kind of negative sides, but I think it's helpful for folks to really understand how important this is.
Yeah. This is not emotion. It's not just I don't feel good. Yeah. Amelia, maybe the launching point for us writing the book was Amelia being hospitalized twice for stress. Yeah. Never got a diagnosis.
No, they ended up taking my appendix out. But I had appendicitis for over a year, and they didn't know what was wrong because it didn't present in whatever classical way, because it was inflammation that was brought on by stress that I was well, yeah, I was in doctoral school, and doctoral school was hard, and I'm a conductor and a woman, and that is also hard. I was commuting. I'm a stepmother. It was hard. It was way, way too much. And I was trying to do it anyway, and my body was like, no. And Emily thought that my case was really extreme.
I thought it was.
Hospitalized twice for this stress-induced inflammation.
Yeah.
But as we have talked about the book in real life with real women, we have lost count of the number of women who have told us, yes, I was hospitalized for stress-induced XYZ.
Yeah.
Wow.
They couldn't figure out what was wrong. They told me to go home and relax.
Yeah. And take a bath or
Right. Have a glass of wine.
Have a glass of wine. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think
How
that
about fuck you?
yeah. No. I mean, it's your health, it's your body, and you want to figure out what's going on and actually have, the kind of scientifically proven or things that will actually be strategies to allow you to move through the emotion, right? Or
And let's talk about some of those.
Yeah. No, we're going to get there.
I just want to mention really briefly that when it comes to medical stuff, we know from the research that women and people of color are more likely to be dismissed and have their pain ignored.
Yes.
Which it makes sense that those people would then postpone seeking medical assistance. Meanwhile, their bodies are also people of size, their bodies fall more and more apart while they delay seeing a doctor who's going to tell them there's nothing wrong anyway.
Right. And so that kind of goes into the minority stress research.
Right.
And in your book, do you kind of focus in on that and how that impacts, as you said, for women, for people of color, for probably people with disabilities, LGBT folks,
mm-hmm.
who are from underrepresented communities? Do you kind of go into more of that research and kind of shine a light on the prevalence as it impacts those particular communities?
The primary audience of the book is women. So we do focus on the difference between how women experience these things versus men, but it's different differences, but it's the same oppressions.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. I think that's really helpful for our audience. And so in thinking about our audience, so we're talking about prevalence of burnout. How prevalent is burnout when it comes to folks in professional settings? And I know that's where a lot of the research comes from.
Yeah.
And I don't know how granular you get, but just kind of keeping in mind that there's a lot of folks in our audience who are leaders, visionaries, change agents, they're movers and shakers. They want to build workplaces of the future that are cultivating a sense of belonging where no matter who you are, you know that when you show up, you can be yourself, your genius is recognized, and you're included in moving that organization forward.
I wish I could work there.
Right. That's what we're all committed to doing together.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's a work in progress, right?
Yeah. Rates of burnout vary from profession to profession and from demographic to demographic, but I'm going to say at least half. And that's in right now who's experiencing it. About half of people right now in those sorts of professions are burned out right now. We do not know one woman who has heard our definition of burnout and not been like, yup.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's interesting, right? So you're saying about one half, and in some of the research that I've done in my own book, Belonging at Work, it's was looking at purpose, like those folks in the workplace who feel like they have a sense of purpose, and it's less than a quarter, right? So it would be interesting to see kind of that overlap of kind of purpose, value, meaning, belonging, and when that's not present for those kind of almost 75% of workers, that experience with also burnout and how that kind of feeds into it.
Yeah, there's a unique situation. I'm a musician and a teacher, and those two professions are rife with burnout. And one of the very specific things that happen to people who work in caregiving jobs, like teaching, like nursing, is that caring and having a sense of purpose is built into their work. You want to care. You do care very deeply about the people that you're working with and for. And that itself can be a source of burnout, even though you need some of that to live and work in your life and to feel good about what you do. But if you feel like I have this purpose to fulfill, and it turns out the administration is not allowing you to fulfill that purpose, or you care about the kids and you can't do what they actually need you to do because you're having these restrictions, the amount that you care can actually make you burn out faster.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Which is why it's so amazing to have people who are striving to make workplaces where people who care are not stifled.
Right. And oftentimes the people that are trying to make the workplaces like that are also investing a lot of their own emotional labor, right? Mm-hmm. So they're also, I would say, in a caring profession, right? Because,
yes.
And that's I would say the majority of people viewing this right now are there. So they're heading up either departments or strategic goals or programs that are all centered around building a more inclusive workplace. And so oftentimes for folks in this audience, right, they sometimes, well, I would say more often than not, lack the true institutional support that they need and the resources, right, to implement the change that they know that they can do. So with that in mind, what advice do you have for these folks when it comes to the potential of getting stuck in negative emotions that come with the territory of feeling like their work isn't supported?
Yeah. Thing number one, separate the process of dealing with your stressors from the process of dealing with your stress. So your stressors are sort of like the institutional barriers that you confront, the jerk faces who don't get it and may never get it, just the sheer emotionality of confronting these sorts of difficult issues every day. Those are your stressors. Stress is the physical thing that happens in your body in response to those stressors. The skills you need to deal with your stressors include your communication skills, your policy analysis skills, right? That is totally separate from the skills you need to deal with the stress. To deal with the stress, you need to learn how to complete the stress response cycle, which will generally require that you stop dealing with your stressors for a minute and instead focus on allowing your body to complete the stress response cycle and return to a place of peace and hope.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful. And just thinking about the stressors, just kind of just highlighting that again, like you said, I mean, these are the barriers that might be in the way. So a lack of a budget or a lack of the leadership team truly understanding what that vision is that you're working towards. And like you said, what shows up in your body as a reaction to that being the stress. So
and
this
go for it. A large part of the frustration is people's expectation that once I get that budget increase, I'll feel better because I have managed the stressor. But that's not true, because getting an increased budget does not tell your body you are safe. What tells your body you are safe is physical activity, is affection, I'm sure we'll get more specific about the things. But we actually talked to a journalist in Ireland who helped advocate for the vote to make abortion legal in Ireland. And they got to the end of a year of advocacy and knocking on doors, and the vote passed, and they celebrated, and they all collapsed. They thought they were going to be happy and fine and feel good at the end
because they won.
Because they won. The stressor, which is the illegality of abortion, was gone. But that stressor is not a stressor that could be solved with the things that tell your body it's safe. So instead of just thinking, oh, I solved the problem, therefore I shouldn't feel bad anymore, your body doesn't know that the problem is solved. You need to speak body language to let it know that it is now safe.
Okay, so I love that analogy, and I can think of different victories that folks in this audience, you get a budget, like you said, or you get the approval of your leadership team. Your CEO is now talking about the importance of inclusion. That's your work, and you see that change, right? And yet you're still feeling exhausted, right?
Yeah,
So talk to us a little bit about how we can better pinpoint the litany of emotions that we experience throughout the day. I always think of monkey mind, I do a lot of meditation, the thoughts that come and go, and oftentimes they're attached to emotions. So how do we know, on that, okay, so we're experiencing different emotions throughout the day. How do we know if or when we're stuck in an emotion, and what are some habits to help us get unstuck?
Oh man, if you're in a situation where you're processing the emotion you are currently experiencing, you are golden. You are already fine.
Okay.
What most of us are dealing with is the emotion that we've experienced, cumulatively over multiple decades.
Yeah.
We're walking around with decades worth of incomplete stress response cycles. So what we need is to build into our days or our weeks opportunities just to complete generic stress response cycles. It's not like the stress you experience today is partitioned off from the stress you experienced other times. It just goes into the pot somewhere in your body. I don't know where that is in your body. For me, it's right here on my neck. And then I also get it in my hips too sometimes. Everybody's different in where they put it, but that's just where most stress goes in the body. And sometimes people do feel it physically. You can tell that like it's accumulating and getting to a bad point because you feel it in your body. Some people don't notice it in their body
until it's way too late.
For example, you're lying on the bathroom floor in so much pain you can't stand up, and so you need to tell your husband, honey, I think you need to drive me to the hospital. Just a totally random example that has nothing to do with anybody here. So basically, it's less about noticing, because if you are in a place where you can notice that you're having a thing that's obstructing your clarity, you're fine. Okay. You're good. You have what you need. What really, though, it's, you get home from a day and you feel like this situation happening. This is my shoulder shrug for people who are not looking at the screen or who are vision impaired. Hello. Your shoulders are up by your ears, and you know that something not great is happening in your physiology. And so you do one of the things. For me, physical activity. And this is the one that is like really obvious from a biological point of view. If you are being chased by a lion, what do? Run.
I hope.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's only two possible outcomes in the being chased by a lion scenario. Either you get eaten by the lion, in which case none of the rest of this matters, or you survive. You manage to run back to your village and get away from the lion, and you run into like a friend's house and they bar the door with you, and eventually you see the lion give up and walk away. And you suddenly know that you are safe, and this person just saved your life, and your body, you feel relieved, and you're glad to be alive, and you love your friends and family. It is the combination of the physical movement. It's not the lion going away that makes that happen. It is the physical activity and the connection of the person who helped you. Those are the things that cue to your body that you're safe. What's awesome about the fact that your body can do this, even without the lion going away, is that means that even if you don't get the budget increase and you don't get the policy change you want, and the CEO doesn't start talking about diversity in public, you can still complete the stress response cycle and feel better and return to a place of balance and safety and peace in your body so that you feel well enough to go back and do it again.
To go back to your question was, how do you know if you need to complete the stress response cycle? The answer is you definitely do. Yeah. If you've ever experienced stress, there's probably, like if you were ever teased in middle school, like that stress is still waiting for you to complete the cycle. Like you definitely do.
So talk to me, like, let's go into the strategies now. So,
okay, good.
It's obviously, there are things that have happened to us to shape who we are today. Some of those things are good experiences. Some of them are not so great. Some of them are trauma-based, right? And so you're talking about things accumulating over time. Do we just need to get a good therapist, or like, what are some, that's probably a part of this, but
sure.
Where do we start? And maybe for folks that might have an aversion to therapy, how can you bring them in to encourage them to acknowledge emotions and to trust the process to go through and complete that stress cycle, like you said?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be anywhere near that intellectual. You don't have to believe in therapy. You don't need a therapist. Start with your body.
You don't have to be willing to admit that feelings are.
No. Yes. You don't even have to believe any of this is true. If you just do some of the strategies that complete the stress response cycle, you're going to start to feel better. And when you start to notice that your body is changing, your muscles are relaxing, your sleep is improving, you're not quite so angry all the time anymore, you're going to notice changes. If you just go through the motions and do it, and you start to notice things are changing, and then you start to notice more things. One step in through this door opens onto a vast panoply of possibilities.
Yeah. So where do we start? What's kind of like if we're scaffolding up, what's the most basic thing that we can do collectively?
Physical activity.
Yeah.
Thing one is physical activity.
And I know people are like, well, no crap.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know before that exercise is good for us.
Right, exactly.
But no, seriously, the reason it's good for you is because it tells your body that you return to a place of safety. My favorite example of this is traffic. If you have a commute that involves traffic, whether it's in a car or on a train or whatever, by the time you get home from the traffic, you feel terrible. You don't feel like, you don't get to your driveway and be like, yay, I survived. I love my friends and family. I'm so glad to be alive. No, your body is still in a state of heightened stress. But if you just go for a walk around the block, that can be enough to communicate to your body, look, you moved your body out of the uncomfortable place and have returned to a place of safety.
But that said, physical activity does not work for everyone.
Does not work for everyone.
I was a regular exerciser by the time I was hospitalized twice for stress-induced trauma. I was doing yoga. I was going to the gym 6 times a week. It didn't work for me. It was not enough. So the next thing we recommend as the basic foundation of how to start to feel better in your life is getting a good night's sleep. Emily has an hour-long talk that she does just about sleep. And when we do talks about it, I used to forbid her from spending that much time. We get so many questions about sleep. If you want, we can go into some details, but I'll just say that like physical activity, getting a good night's sleep is not just a thing that I can say, here, go do it, and you just do it. There are so many barriers to sleep that are about lifestyle, that are about social pressures, that are about social justice issues. And once you make a priority, okay, I'm going to make sleep a priority. I'm going to get 7 to 9 hours of good sleep every night. And you start to try and you encounter the barriers. Encountering those barriers is another doorway into so many other possibilities.
Well, let's talk. Yeah, let's talk a little. I think that's really great. I mean, it's something that I hope everyone who's watching this is getting some sleep, right? I mean, that's what we need to feed our bodies. But definitely talk with us a little bit more about how we as folks kind of in workplaces can do a better job of.
Emily will legit talk for an hour, so you might want to set a timer or just let her know when to stop.
Maybe 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good limit. I like that. Thank you.
Sure.
So hopefully people know 7 to 9 hours of sleep per 24 is the target. You can get those in any kind of chunking that works for you, as long as there's one chunk that's at least 4 consolidated hours in a row. Some people are contiguous sleepers. They like to get their 7 to 9 hours. I'm just going to call it 8 hours. All in a row. Some people want 4 hours and 4 hours. Some people go 7.5 hours and then an hour and a half nap. People vary in how their sleep is segmented. It does not affect your overall restedness. What you're aiming for is about 1 hour of rest for every 2 hours of wakefulness. People vary in their circadian rhythms. Ideally, we want people to be going to sleep when their body wants them to be asleep and waking when their body wants them to wake. For me, that's going to bed between 9 and 10 at night and waking between 5 and 6 in the morning. I spontaneously wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm an early bird. I'm a lark, naturally. Amelia is an owl. Her body wants to go to sleep at midnight. Yeah, and not wake up until 9 o'clock. I'm also a 7.5 hour sleeper. Amelia's a 9 hour sleeper. If she only gets 8, she really feels it. We have to honor and recognize what our body wants, because when it comes to you versus your body wins every time. We don't mean rest is important like it's a good idea. We mean that if you don't get the rest will come and get you. It will grab you by the face, pin you to the ground, put its foot on your chest and be like, I win. That's rest. We're not kidding. That rest really matters.
When rest is grabbing you by the face and pinning you to the ground, talk to us what that
rest. That's all there is to do. That's the only advice to give. Go to bed.
It's a lot more complicated than that because there are a lot of barriers. People feel the number one thing that young women in particular have told us when we're like, sleep is so important. And they're like, but I feel guilty about sleeping because I should be spending that time working for someone else or doing this other thing or doing my schoolwork. And if I'm sleeping, that's only serves me. Mm-hmm. And that's a barrier, your internal expectation of your own ability not to sleep because you're superhuman. You want to talk about barriers?
The way we have come to deal with this is to reframe rest as an act of resistance. And we, of course, are not the only people do this. I love Trisha Hersey's work on this. She is the nap minister and talks about naps as a sacred space specifically for Black people in the United States, of reclaiming rest as their birthright and as reparations from the generations of labor stolen from Black bodies in America. One of the ways that white people can participate in anti-racist work is to support and protect resting, joyful spaces for people of color in the United States, and let's face it, everywhere. Mm-hmm. So rest is an act of resistance. You can't spell resist without rest.
Oh, I love that.
Simple strategy, get a calendar. You want to see a full 7 days and 24 hours. Mark out where you actually are spending all that time. So when you're at work, when you're commuting, when you're dealing with kids, if you've got kids, partner, if you've got partner, other family, sleep, food, grooming, where are you actually putting your time? And then another calendar where you try to mark out, what would I have to do in order to create enough space and time to get the rest my body actually needs, so that you can see the in conflict. Where do I actually, like, what is the challenge? Like, what do I actually, how much time do I need to create in order to have adequate time for rest?
So do you have suggestions on, are there apps on our phone that we can monitor this, or what's the best way for busy professionals where I can imagine some folks listening to this now of like, yes, that's a great idea. I don't journal. I don't really write things down. It's just not everyone's style. So what might be some other ways just to kind of track that, or be more aware of, how often we're resting and how solid our sleep state is and things like that.
We all use calendars, right? Nobody keeps track of their schedule in their brain anymore. It's all some app. I use Google Calendar, and just schedule it.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to go brush my teeth and wash my face at 8:30. I'll be in bed by 9:15. I want to be asleep by 9:30, and I'm going to sleep until whatever my number of hours is. Just schedule it.
Yeah.
If you follow a calendar and you're capable of it, give it a try. And then when you don't end up following your schedule, take note of what are the things that
What's the obstruction?
What's the obstruction? Are you sucked into a TV show and like you can't go to bed before that show's over? Or can you DVR that and watch it tomorrow? Or are you avoiding sleep for some other reason?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people avoid sleep because they have bad dreams. There are ways to deal with that.
Yes. So
the primary barrier is actually people feeling guilty about sleeping, or of going to bed and not being able to fall asleep. The most common cause of difficulty falling asleep is actually worry about falling asleep, watching the clock and calculating how much sleep you're going to get if you fall asleep now, or if you fall asleep now. Yep. And that's the way there's cognitive behavioral therapy strategies, mindfulness practice, all the skills that we use for any of these other health issues. You can just apply it to insomnia, of learning to like let go of the narrative in your head and transition to paying attention to the calm and peace in your
body. Yeah. I think that kind of my takeaway from that piece of the calendar is similar to what a lot of folks in the workplace do around creative time, or this is the time I'm writing my program, or doing a thing that takes a high level of concentration, is just that time blocking, right? And so just like you said, kind of time blocking your sleep, like 9 to whatever time you wake up or whenever you go to bed.
Yeah.
That's a really good strategy. So you talked about movement. So however we can move our bodies, so that through exercise or just going for a walk around the block, whatever that looks like. If that's not possible, or both and rest, what might be one or two other strategies just so to help us go through the processing of our emotions, the complete cycle?
Affection is probably the next one.
Probably. Yep. So connection with people you care about and trust. John Gottman recommends a 30-minute stress-reducing conversation every day where it's not about solving problems, it's about decompressing and sharing and feel supported and connected with your certain special someone, or a certain special someone in your life. One standard recommendation is the 20-second hug. This is a potentially awkwardly long time to hug someone, which is the point. Like it's enough time that your body can be like, this is, I have returned home. I am connected and safe with this person. A 6-second hug, that's John Gottman again, does the same thing. 6-second kiss.
Oh yeah, 6 seconds.
Again, potentially awkwardly long time to kiss someone unless you really like and trust them. And that's why it's so powerful, is because it tells your body there's someone in your life you like and trust enough to kiss for all these seconds in a row.
Yeah.
And it's not about the 20 seconds or the 6 seconds. It's so that it's long enough to get past the moment of awkwardness into the moment of shift back to the sensation of safety.
Yeah. And I remember reading something about the hug in particular, and this is very, very binary, but in terms of kind of gender differences in how the study was done, for men to hold a hug longer, that was really important to kind of, I don't know, whether it's lowering cortisol. There was something about the duration of the hug, and that men in particular in this particular study needed a longer hug. So take it.
There's a therapist named Suzanne Iasenzit who just calls it hugging until relaxed.
Yeah.
You stay there with your arms around this person until your body goes, ah.
Yes. Yes. And that's definitely, so, okay. So in the instance that, we definitely live in a very, in an increasingly isolated culture, right? So, say someone does not have that physical affection, because they might be isolated. What might be another strategy for those folks?
There are lots of other ways to connect to people, even just a friendly interaction with your barista. Hey, how are you? I'm feeling fine. Even that's enough to remind your body that the world is a safe place.
Nice.
Connection with animals is also just as effective, sometimes more effective for people who don't trust other people or at a point in their lives where connecting with other people is not safe.
Yeah.
Connect a dog, a cat, a horse, doesn't matter, fish. And also a spiritual connection to a higher power can also serve as a really firm, supportive, welcome space.
Nice. That's super helpful. So we have exercise, movement, we have rest, we have affection.
Oh, I also want to mention that sometimes introverts, really want to say, no, I'm not going to be helped by connecting to other people because I just want to be alone all the time. And that's just not true. The way that sleep deprivation is torture and you have to get sleep, social isolation is also a form of torture. We all need some social connection. And if we're not getting enough, it's like starvation.
John Cacioppo calls it our social appetite, our appetite for connection. People have different sort of intensities of what their need is, but everybody needs some.
Yes. I love that. So, okay. So these are really good strategies. I think.
Can we do one more?
Yes, sure. Please.
Imagination might be my favorite because of Amelia's story.
Okay.
Yeah, I mentioned that physical activity was not working for me as a stress reducing thing or completing the stress response cycle. So when I learned that imagination could complete the stress response cycle, it made sense to me because I was being stressed out mostly by worries, by things in my imagination. But since my imagination can instigate a stress response cycle, my imagination can complete one. So instead of just going on the elliptical machine and like reading a magazine or watching TV, I would imagine myself as Godzilla tromping on the campus and in the parking lot and the administration building and take that, Bursar. And I would get to the end of my workout, and instead of just being hot and sweaty and tired, I felt elated and powerful because I had imagined this thing of me being in power, and I got all the way through to the end of the cycle.
I think that kind of aligns with just that power of visualization, positively, kind of feeding your mind with, feeling powerful or feeling loved, whatever those kind of positive thoughts are. But
I worry when we talk about visualization because the mainstream cultural narrative around it has mostly been about like visualizing yourself in a place of peace,
calm blue ocean.
Yes.
And what we're advocating is visualizing yourself in a place of domination and potentially even violence, where you are just beating the shit out of whoever it is who's standing in your way. You're only imagining it.
Yeah.
Don't do these things in real life. Don't actually like pound like Godzilla all over the parking lot. That's not okay.
Well, the thing is, once you've worked your way through the stress response cycle, you no longer feel the need to do it in real life.
You've like cleaned it out, and your body's like, oh, okay.
It also works passively when you participate in stories like reading a book or watching a movie, where a character goes through a journey of tension and then release, or of striving and then achieving. You, because of how empathy works, you also go through that emotional journey. So a story can carry you through the stress response cycle, even if you're not actively creating that story on your own.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons it feels so good to watch that movie that makes you cry every time. It feels so good to feel so bad because you're being carried along through a complete stress response cycle.
Gotcha. And there's some resolution at the end, right?
Yeah, you'll feel it in your body when it's done, like Amelia did.
You know why people hate cliffhangers? And they don't get to
because you don't get to complete the cycle.
You're trapped in the middle.
Yeah, you're trapped in the middle. It's very frustrating.
And then you come back because that's exactly what
right. That's what it's for. Yeah,
because you have to.
Yes. I'm a big fan, of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They were notorious for doing that. So anyway, I digress. So
I've
I
read several blog posts about how emotion and psychology are portrayed in Buffy. It's really a very effective. There are large-scale structural narrative in the interactions of the characters with Buffy, representing different personality parts. You can edit all that out if you want, but like,
sure. No, I think that, I mean, if you want to share the resource, I think that would be, for anyone who's interested in some pop culture reference from the 90s, let's do it. So when it comes to, let's go back to kind of like recognizing the audience and the workplaces that a lot of folks are in. So, not every workplace has cultivated a sense of belonging for everyone. There are some folks that are actually coming to the summit because they're actively in toxic workplaces where the culture is negative. So how might this individual approach help in addressing larger systems work through maybe a negative culture going through the entire emotional stress response cycle? I mean, is it adaptable? Have you thought about this in the work? And if so, and even if you haven't, do you have ideas on that?
Yes. Thing one is that you're never going to succeed in making change if you're too exhausted and burnt out to stay in the fight. So if you want to stay in working, you do need to get the rest, to get some physical activity, to connect with other people, to make sure that you're separating the stress from the stressor, managing the stress itself, even as you are fighting stressors that are not going to be completed maybe in your lifetime even.
Right.
So if you take care of the stress, manage it separately as you work towards the stressors, that's going to keep you healthy and alive long enough to stay in the work. But these self-care strategies are not the answer. The cure for burnout is not self-care. The cure for burnout is all of us taking care of each other. But the first step into that, the way to open the door to that, is for you to maintain your own well-being, to consider it your social responsibility if you're going to care for others. Put on your own oxygen mask first, acknowledging that there are barriers to doing that, like our own expectations that we shouldn't need oxygen.
Yeah, and that specific phrase has come up with most of the guests for today, talking about self-care. And I don't think that we can hear that enough, or just this idea that self-care is not selfish. And we have to maintain our rest, our health. And sometimes we have to take a step back in order to take care of us so that we can come back into the work. Right. And
I have mixed feelings about this idea that like self-care is not selfish, and
same word.
To other people to take care of yourself, and that is really true. You're a parent. You need to get good sleep, because if you are not well rested, it's like being intoxicated. Your judgment, your reflexes are all impaired. And how are you going to take good care of your kids if you are impaired as if you were drinking alcohol? You would not do that. So you do owe it to your kids to get sleep if you're going to be a good parent. Same thing about being a good boss. So yes, that's true. But then also at the same time, if you are a human being who exists in the world, you deserve to feel good, regardless of whether you use your good feeling to care for others. I don't care if you use your good feeling to take care of others. It'd be nice if you did, if you wanted to. Awesome. Everyone who's here already wants to. But that's not the only reason. Every person who is alive deserves to feel good, deserves to experience a great night's sleep, deserves to feel happy and comfortable and not in pain or sleep deprived just because they are worthy of that.
So in the book, we talk about a thing we call human giver syndrome. We get this language from Kate Mann, the moral philosopher, who wrote a really spectacular, pretty dark, but glorious book called Down Girl, The Logic of Misogyny. In the book, she describes this sort of world where there's two kinds of humans. There are human beings who have a moral obligation to be and fulfill and manifest their full humanity. And they need to be as acquisitive, competitive, and entitled as it takes to get what they need in order to be their full humanity. And then there are the human givers who have a moral obligation to give their full humanity to the human beings so that they can manifest their full humanity. Human givers are not allowed to have any needs of their own. That's an imposition on the human beings. They are obligated to give everything they have. If you're a human giver, you know that saying you can't pour from an empty cup? Mm-hmm. If you're a human giver with an empty cup, somebody will come up to you and say, "What are you doing hoarding that cup? Somebody over there needs that cup." Yeah, I mean, like, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. If you're a human giver, people are going to be like, well, you don't have to, but like, these people are cold and you're standing there with all this kinetic energy in your body. And I mean, you know what? If you don't want to set yourself on fire to keep those people warm, good for you.
Self-care is so important.
So important. It's really nice for you that you're making that choice not to set yourself on fire. Good for you. Yes. I don't know if that's going to resonate with anybody else.
No, I mean, it's resonating with me. I'm just thinking, okay, so, I mean, this is definitely describing a dynamic that's in our world, right?
So this is why it can't be self-care, because self-care is selfish in the context of human giver syndrome, where we all feel like we have a moral obligation to give everything we have until there's literally nothing left, like we're disposable tubes of toothpaste, which is why the answer has to be all of us caring for each other. Amelia and I have come to rely on each other to notice when the other one is getting perspy and close to the end. There's this one time when I was writing a TED Talk
for a month.
Yeah. Oh God, we're going to tell this story, aren't we?
Yeah. Do it. Okay. So the cure for burnout is not self-care. It's all of us caring for each other. And in the dynamic of human beings versus human givers, we don't want a world that's constructed entirely of human beings. It seems like the better way to be is a being. No, if we're all givers and we're all paying attention, taking care of each other, the world is a better place for everybody. So this one time when Emily was writing a TED Talk, and she was extremely stressed out about it. So like I was going to go to Vancouver with her and help her out. And she was like, well, maybe you shouldn't go. And like being really mean and unpleasant. And I was like, you are so stressed out right now. And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm just fine. Like a drunk. Like, I'm fine. Give me the keys. I'm fine. And I was like, no. And so I was at her house and I just put her dogs on leashes and put them in my car and said, I'm taking your dogs. I took them and I'm like, you're going to the beach and I'm taking your dogs and you have no reason to stay home because I'm pet sitting for you. So get out. And
she kicked me out of my own house.
I did. And like 3 hours later, she was texting me from the beach. You're right.
I was completely at the end of my rope. I was like, I'll just get through it. It'll be fine. I just need to get to the end of it.
It's almost like when kind of in the world of meditation, where when you feel like you don't have the time to sit down and just pause, right? And so it sounds like what you're talking about is the importance of accountability. Maybe if we're taking care of each other, and maybe there's a nicer way of saying that, but just kind of checking in with folks.
For me, it came down to trusting that Amelia saw where I was at better than I could, that I was too far down the hole to know how far down the hole I was.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a matter of not like just being like, fine, you're going to be mean, I'm out. Like, but saying like, but she's being and like very uncomfortable. And instead of me turning away from that, I turn toward it and say, here's a thing I can give you to make this possible. Like, okay, so there's a scene at the end of Moana. Have you seen Moana?
No.
Spoiler.
You didn't see Moana.
After the 90s, pop culture, I'm out.
Moana's this girl on a journey and she confronts a lava monster, right?
Oh.
And Tika is the lava monster, and she's trying to get to Te Fiti to return the heart of Te Fiti. So she gets past the lava monster and then turns toward it and sees the lava monster has a spiral design on her chest, just like the spiral design on the heart of Te Fiti. And she realized she's holding the heart of her enemy in her hand. And she turns towards Teka and tells the ocean, let her come to me, and sings this song. And I've got me.
It's like Pema Children. She turns toward the difficult thing, the scary lava monster, with kindness and compassion.
I have crossed the horizon.
She sings a coaxing song.
I know your name.
Right? Can you imagine?
In the heart from inside.
Whether it's turning towards someone you care about who's in a bad place.
But this does not define you.
And turning toward your own internal critic.
Is Disney going to sue you if we keep singing this?
I don't know. They might be watching right now. So,
it's about turning toward your own, the things that feel difficult, like where you can trust enough, the connection is strong enough. That is where true caring happens.
So, okay.
So watch Moana. And if you have feelings when she turns toward Teka, maybe you have some stuff inside you that would like you to turn toward it. Kindness and compassion. Could be.
Yeah, no, I love this. I'm thinking, I mean, you have a dynamic where your siblings, your twins, right? And so there's trust is built in that relationship. I'm curious. No. Okay.
I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household. We had to learn. This is a learned skill. Like we were taught, we were distant.
We like never talked about anything because we had a very dysfunctional family where like you didn't talk about the things. And for like the first 5 months when we were traveling around talking about burnout, and especially when we talked about connection, how important it is to have caring people around you, journalists would ask us, so what if you don't have people in your life, if you don't have relationships like that? At first, what we said was you need to get better people. And then we realized our own story, that is not what we did. We had the exact same person, and each of us grew into the skill of trust and connection.
Which is good news. You don't have to have an identical twin to have someone who's going to turn toward your uncomfortable feelings with kindness and compassion.
And just steal your dogs and be like, I know why this is happening. Please go to the beach.
It's a learned skill. Your family's the people you choose, the ones who learn that with you.
Yeah.
So it's something that you have to, these are muscles you have to develop. And I'm thinking about folks in the workplace who may not have, they may not have family, right? So the workplace can be a sanctuary in some respects, right? And if it's not, or if it could be better, I'm wondering what you all learned in growing into a healthy relationship with each other and having that trust. What might some of those, as you talked about growing into trust and connection, what might be some things that could be adapted in the workplace, colleague to colleague, perhaps? And just kind of recognizing to be there and to kind of have that trusting relationship of, Rhodes, maybe you shouldn't do that public talk next week. It seems like you should take a vacation. Or like, how might you be able to do that in the workplace? Is that possible?
There's actually a lot of research about trust, and I'm sure other speakers have talked about the trust game, where one person is given, we use cupcakes and we talk about it instead of money because it's more fun. So the researchers give me, 4 cupcakes and a choice. I can give Emily all 4 of my cupcakes. And then the cupcakes magically triple in quantity. So I give her 4 and she ends up with 12. And then she has a choice. She can give me back all 12 cupcakes. She can run away with all 12 cupcakes, or she could do the thing that would be very trustworthy, which is to give me 6, and we both get 6, right? Yes. So this exchange of cupcakes could take place in a lot of ways. It might be attention, kindness, and compassion toward difficult feelings could be a cupcake. It could be respect and listening patiently while someone explains their idea. It could be money, because employees get paid, and if they're reliably paid what they're actually worth, that establishes trust.
Yes.
So if you think about exchanging with someone something of value, the act of sharing and sharing in return, that thing that happens when the cupcake triples, that actually happens. Yeah. When we share space and energy with each other. There's new science that talks about the ways that we share energy with each other, and how we interact with other people turns into our personalities. Like, our identity does not stop at our skin. Our identity is shared with the group that we're physically in space with. So whatever is of value that you're sharing, conversation, patient listening, ideas, money, whatever it is, if you're sharing it and respectfully giving and taking in ways that are trustworthy, that will establish trust.
I love that. And that's very actionable. And it seems attainable. And these are very important things to have in any relationship. And that also is a part of the workplace in building trusting relationships. So in rounding out the interview, I wanted to give you all the opportunity, knowing what you know of our summit participants, what's one thing about burnout that we haven't yet covered that you really feel strongly that you want the audience to know? So this is kind of like your opportunity, kind of like the final thought of what will inspire us to recognize, if we're starting to feel crispy and doing and adapting some of the strategies that you've shared today. So any final words of inspiration or wisdom?
I would say our definition of wellness is not a state of mind. It is not a state of being. It is a state of action. Wellness is the freedom for your body to move through the cycles and oscillations of living in a mammalian body. And what we're working toward, what all of us change agents are working toward, is a world where everyone has access to the freedom to allow their bodies to move through all of the cycles, the rest to action, back to rest cycle, the stress to peace, back to stress, back to peace cycle, the connection to autonomy, back to connection, back to autonomy cycle. When our bodies are free to do this, it helps us to create places of freedom for other people's bodies to do it too.
Love that.
Did you want to add a thing?
No, that's the thing. Because the main things are separate the stress from the stressor, get the rest or the rest will get you. Cure for burnout is not self-care. It's all of us caring for each other. And wellness is not a state of mind. It's a state of action. It's the freedom to oscillate.
Yes. I think that's beautiful. I think that this has been really helpful for me. And I definitely know some of those strategies that you've shared. I'll be practicing with them, and I hope many of the summit participants as well. I hope you all are inspired and curious, and definitely check out the book. And so,
oh crap! Here come the dogs.
Oh no!
Sorry.
Right, so we'll edit this out.
No, it's cute.
Connection. This is where you're getting your affection with your animals.
Right.
All right.
Hang on.
Okay.
Jeez.
Wow.
That was Lucy. Sorry about that.
Go away, dear.
Okay. Oh, there she is. Okay. So we may see a dog throughout here. So where's the best place that we can find you online and perhaps get a cameo of your dog as well?
Oh, so my dog, who's in a different house, makes appearances on my Instagram, Nagoski.
Okay.
Amelia's on Instagram at our official Burnout Book Group.
Yes.
Okay.
And Facebook, Burnout Book Group.
Burnout Book Group. And the website is burnoutbook.net.
All right. So burnoutbook.net.
And the most important thing at the website is there's a bunch of free downloadable like bonus features like discussion guides or like reading group questions. There's a bunch of extra stuff about sleep, like 10 tips for falling asleep. There's a lot of fun resources.
Yeah. So we will definitely include that in all of the great links that we have here. I want to remind everyone who's watching the summit, if you want to have extended access to this conversation or any of the workbooks that we have and some of the other interesting information, definitely check out the link below where you can access all of that good stuff. And for Emily and Amelia, thank you so much for being today's featured belonging champions. It's been a really enlightening conversation. Like I said, I've learned a ton, and I hope that so many summit participants have as well. So thank you for
We're belonging champions.
You're belonging champions. I love it. And so thank you. Thank you for growing the belonging movement and helping us have healthier workplace cultures.
Thank you.
Until the next time, we'll talk with the group.